Hey guys, it's Tony. Let's talk about Steven Universe.
Today in Nerd History!
Standing out from an ocean of ludicrous, violent, gross-out type of shows, Steven Universe is a marvelous outlier in that it celebrates inclusivity, positivity, and uses violence only as like a last resort. It doesn't seem like the type of show that would need to be censored. Nevertheless, time and again, people prove that they will find any reason to be upset and offended, whether it's violence in the show or sexuality, or that it just acknowledges that gay people exist. Here are 6 weird ways that Steven Universe has been censored.
Number 1. Diluted violence.
Steven Universe is not a violent show by any stretch of the term. The main character, gets caught up in a few scraps now and again, but he always attempts to de-escalate the violence first.
His main tool is a shield, after all, and his preferred way of solving problems is a protective bubble.
That said, the show does feature some pretty PG brawls, but in some places outside of the US, that PG violence is NG, which stands for not gonna happen, dude. Because they cut it out. Or cut around it, at least.
The episode Jailbreak features one of the show's biggest fights, and the UK version tried to lessen the impact of the fight by, lessening the impacts. Frames with punches connecting were surgically replaced with a hit flash, a technique anyone who's seen Batman the Animated Series would probably be familiar with.
Obscuring a frame or two doesn't really hide what's happening, and in a certain way it makes the smaller hits seem even more severe.
Perhaps recognizing this, Australia and New Zealand's censorship goes a bit further, replacing Jasper's visor breaking with a Steven-approved burst of stars. Not only does this obscure more visual information than a hit flash, it unevenly cuts seconds out of the animation, causing Garnet's awesome fight anthem Stronger Than You to awkwardly skip and jump like a disc man bouncing in the back of a pickup truck.
And when trimming out frames isn't enough, sometimes entire sequences need to go.
The UK determined that this, admittedly pretty brutal, scene of Garnet getting smashed back into a gem had to be truncated. Gone is the terrified look on her face as she disintegrates, one of the few moments of expressive emotion we ever get from the unflappable bruiser.
It's reduced to just the initial hit and then a poof of smoke, and all of the emotion and drama of this big gut-wrenching scene is sucked out. And silly scenes got the axe too. In the episode Watermelon Steven, Garnet punches her way through a volley of, Watermelon Stevens, like a gosh dang champ, just pa-pow, giving it to him in the face. With fists.
Sure, they're children who are later revealed to be sentient and civilized, but it's meant to be goofy. All the same, Australia, New Zealand, and Latin America got rid of it.
I guess they're afraid that their children's psyches are fragile, like ripe watermelons, just waiting to be cracked open by intergalactic gem fists.
Number 2, subtracted signage.
As we've covered in another video, the Steven Universe team was able to fly in a ton of dirty jokes right under the Dogcopter's radar.
One such gag is the arcade game Meat Beat Mania.
It's a simple rhythm game, but the name definitely implies bopping the bologna, or spanking the salami, or masturbating the mortadella.
And in Europe, you could show a naked woman in an ad for milk, but oh god, please keep anything away that resembles a jerk-off joke. The European version scrubbed out the word meat, making the game's controller situation a little more confusing.
And back on the show's home turf, Cartoon Network decided that they're okay with dick jokes just so long as they're about cranking it and not just holding it.
In the episode Watermelon Steven, the hot dog stand on the boardwalk is called Wiener in Hand. But in later episodes, it seems to have gone generic.
And with Meat Beat Mania occupying the arcades already, I guess this town just wasn't big enough for multiple jerk-off jokes.
Number 3, different dialogue.
Localizing for different languages can be a pretty nuanced practice. I mean, Fanny and Biscuit might not mean the same thing in the US that they do in the UK, but that doesn't explain why they would trade Farty Marty down for just Marty.
Do you ever hear from old Farty Marty? Do you ever hear from old Marty?
Sounds like some uptight censor needs to beef a major ripper just to let off some steam and pressure in the butt region.
Number 4, episodes excised completely.
The ultimate edit, the backspace key so big that it just deletes the whole thing. Wow. That's right, when some episodes have too much objectionable content, they just get the axe entirely. A lot of the Steven Universe episodes affected by this are the result of countries' unfortunate views on same-sex relationships.
The aforementioned Hit the Diamond was a big one, but the Ruby and Sapphire origin story, The Answer, also has never been broadcast in Russia, presumably because their Steven Universe superfan president fell out of love with the show because he's afraid of gay people. We Need to Talk wasn't shown in Turkey for similar reasons, and the Middle East declined to air episodes like So Many Birthdays and Lars and the Cool Kids, presumably due to some of the darker themes of those stories.
Even if you don't agree with the politics of these regions, at least they had, bad reasons for not airing the episodes. Sometimes scenes get removed with no explanation at all.
Number 5, strangely snipped scenes.
Like this scene from Fusion Cuisine.
Can moms be gross?
Why not?
Poland censors hate boogers, hate them. But Polish kids, like any kids, they love bugs. They love that gooey green gold, and they must have slammed their snotty fists down on a boardroom table and demanded that the scene be re-aired, because it eventually was. It's gross talking about all the snot, but they got that scene back in there. Full boog.
One excised scene that makes only slightly more sense is this scene of Steven performing the Heimlich maneuver in order to save Lars from choking on a donut.
Europe has an iffy relationship with a maneuver, and they promptly ejected this scene from the episode like a piece of hot donut being ejected from Lars' esophagus.
Latin America also cut screen time between Lars and Sadie's, finding their courtship in Island Adventure quite unsavory. A lot was cut out, including some of their cool makeout sesh. And this is a heterosexual couple.
Which brings us, of course, to our next topic. We've been saving it. You know what it is. Here we go.
Number 6, pretending homosexuality doesn't exist.
Look, we've touched on this a lot already, but there's enough here to warrant its own entry. To be frank, Steven Universe is kind of groundbreaking when it comes to queer representation in children's media. It features lovable characters who engage in same-sex relationships without it being treated as exotic or extraordinary.
What is extraordinary, however, is that young kids and young adults watching the show might finally see part of themselves on a show that accepts everyone.
More than the punch flashes or the Heimlich maneuver or the dick jokes, censoring or otherwise diluting this powerful message is just, it's a travesty.
But we continue to see it in various localized versions of Steven Universe. Check out what happened in Hit the Diamond in Malaysia. The Malaysian version was so keen to keep out Ruby and Sapphire's smooch fest that it spliced in duplicate shots of the celebratory toss and Steven's reaction.
But a careful ear will notice that they didn't change the audio, so if you're listening, you'll still hear a copious amount of lip smacking as Steven looks away. Maybe the biggest fan uproar came after the UK broadcast of We Need to Talk.
Another flashback episode centering on the relationship between Greg Universe and Rose Quartz. One of the better moments in the episode comes when Pearl finally acts on her grudge against Greg, who she sees as a rival for Rose's romantic affections. While the band is playing, Pearl and Rose spontaneously launch into a fusion dance, which is the most intimate act gems are capable of.
The dance itself was suggestive and not explicit, but even that was too much for Cartoon Network UK.
Similar to the Malaysian version of Hit the Diamond, the UK edit of We Need to Talk replaces offending footage with looped shots of Greg's face and a strumming guitar. It solves the audio skipping problem present in the Garnet Jasper fight, but at the same time it robs the scene of captivating subtext. The vengeful smile on Pearl's face just before fusing says so much more than another shot of Greg's dopey expression.
Fans were rightfully upset by the censoring, and when Cartoon Network UK decided to respond, they just made the whole situation worse.
The US broadcast system requires that shows are marked with a rating, in this case PG, parental guidance necessary. In the UK, we have to ensure everything on air is suitable for kids of any age at any time. We do feel that the slightly edited version is more comfortable for local kids and their parents. Be assured that as a channel and network, we celebrate diversity, evident across our many shows and characters.
Just say it like you mean it, you stuffy British jerko. You edited down this sensual dance between two female-presenting aliens because you're skeeved out by homosexuality. Quit projecting your insecurities onto kids who would only be uncomfortable watching the scene if there was an adult nearby freaking out about it for no good reason.
Rant aside, there's probably no reasoning with these censors. These are the same jerks that edited out the smooch and Lil Butler because it was male-male.
Censors can take out fart jokes and masturbation references all they want, but if you have a problem with Little Butler, you have a problem with me. I don't want to fight though, so we're just gonna have to be upset at each other. Yeah.